Oh, this won't be showing on the camera though, right?
Well, you will get on the wide shot.
Goes on the camera. Where do we stand?
Back here usually, in front of the
Range
curtain.
all the speakers, 'cause we can stay.
Yes, just up here. You can stand here, and then when I step aside, you can move in.
So you can take your pass off.
Oh.
After all that trouble. Okay, anytime you're ready.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Gordon Edwards. Je suis président du regroupement pour la surveillance du nucléaire. My name is Gordon Edwards. I'm president of the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility. And we are here today to send a message to the Canadian government and to the Canadian people. In a couple of days, the Government of Canada is going to be releasing its roadmap, its nuclear roadmap. And there are red lights going on right across the country to this, all along the roadway. Because Canadians do not want the Government of Canada to spend tax money developing a whole new fleet of nuclear reactors to be deployed throughout Canada. We believe that this technology is a moribund industry, and it's too slow, it's too expensive, it's too dangerous. And what's more, it will simply add to an already growing legacy of radioactive waste, which will remain dangerous for thousands of years to come, and for which we in Canada do not have a federal government policy as to how to properly keep this waste out of the rivers and soil and the food chain of Canadians for such a long period of time. As a result of this, 137 municipalities along the Ottawa Valley have been passing resolutions against a quick and dirty approach to managing nuclear waste. The corporations that are planning to pile 1 million cubic meters of radioactive waste into what we call a mega dump beside the Ottawa River are the same corporations who are really pushing forward the agenda of this new fleet of nuclear reactors. So you will find in your press kit a letter sent out just last week from the Canadian Environmental Law Association, from many other Canadian organizations, representatives of civil society, who are urging the Government of Canada to stop pushing this agenda of new reactors and to do its job, its primary job, of protecting Canadians and the environment from the negative effects, the negative health impacts of the radioactive waste which has already been accumulating for such a period of time. If these new small reactors are deployed as the government would like to see across Canada, especially in the north, each one of these sites may become a permanent radioactive waste dump. That's what's happening right now. So that we are going to have radioactive waste dumps scattered throughout, across the landscape throughout Canada. I have looked on the internet for what the definition of good governance is. And it's not got a firm definition, but here's the sentence that caught my eye. The concept centers on the responsibility of governments and governing bodies to meet the needs of the masses as opposed to select groups in society. We call on the Government of Canada to stop colluding with the nuclear industry and to start respecting their obligations to protect Canadians and the environment from the results of past nuclear activities. Thank you.
Bonjour, je suis Ginette Charbonneau et je suis porte-parole du ralliement contre la pollution radioactive et je suis physicienne. Alors voici, l'énergie nucléaire n'est pas propre. Elle est très, très polluante. Ce n'est pas de l'énergie verte. La priorité du Canada doit être de gérer ces immenses déchets radioactifs accumulés depuis bon nombre d'années. Présentement, il n'y a pas encore de site d'enfouissement profond pour les déchets de moyenne et de forte activité et c'est très grave. Les petits réacteurs modulaires génèrent aussi des déchets radioactifs, il ne faut pas oublier ça. Alors, la situation ne va que s'empirer. Éparpiller partout des petits réacteurs, c'est risqué et la population ne veut pas ça. Alors, il faudrait que le gouvernement nous écoute un peu. Alors, j'aimerais l'élaborer un peu plus. Comment peut-on envisager un futur développement nucléaire au Canada sans une capacité de traitement rigoureux des déchets nucléaires? Le réchauffement climatique est dramatique et le développement nucléaire n'est pas nécessairement une solution réaliste à cause des déchets nucléaires engendrés, de la sécurité, des coûts élevés et des longs délais avant qu'ils soient mis en service. Si le Canada n'est pas capable de traiter adéquatement ses déchets radioactifs actuels, comment pensez-vous qu'il pourra le faire pour de petits réacteurs nucléaires dispersés? Nous demandons au gouvernement d'accorder la plus haute priorité au traitement adéquat des déchets radioactifs avant de promouvoir tout futur développement nucléaire. Cette situation déplorable mérite une attention immédiate, autant que celle du réchauffement du climat, car c'est une pollution qui affecte toute la biosphère. Voilà.
Good morning. I'm Ole Hendrickson. I am a researcher for concerned citizens of Renfrew County and area, and I'd like to speak from the perspective of residents and property owners who live near the Chalk River laboratories, about 200 kilometers upstream from here on the Ottawa River. Our group is not opposed to nuclear research. Many of our friends and neighbors have worked at Chalk River or do so today. Chalk River Laboratories is an important part of the economy of Renfrew County. But our group for decades has been concerned about radioactive emissions to air and water from the now closed NRU and NRX reactors and from medical isotope production facilities. We're concerned about the $7 billion nuclear waste liability that has accumulated at Chalk River during the past 70 years of operation. And we're concerned about the leaking waste plumes from the older waste areas and the reactor fuel bays that are putting radioactive contaminants such as tritium and strontium-90 into the Ottawa River. The notion that the engineers who have built or will build nuclear facilities deserve all the public accolades and the highest salaries, and that those who operate, maintain, and decommission these facilities are little more than maintenance workers and garbage men is dangerously wrong. We're concerned that the Government of Canada, the nuclear regulator, the CNSC, and the nuclear industry claim that small modular reactors and nuclear power are clean and safe. And when they do so, they are misleading themselves and the public, and they are ignoring issues that should be dealt with in an open, transparent, and forthright manner. Our group has drafted a petition to the Auditor General to take these concerns to ministers responsible for decisions about clean energy and clean technologies. That petition is in draft form right now, and it's available at our website, www.concernedcitizens.net. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Robert Tredici. I am the founder of the Atomic Photographers Guild, and I'm a documentary photographer. You have to admit that nuclear energy is an exciting idea. You break open the fundamental blocks of matter, and the heat that flares forth from that, you boil water with, and that's how you make clean energy. But nuclear energy in the abstract looks a lot different once you wrestle it to the ground. There you will find that when you unleash the strongest force in the world, well, shit happens. By shit, I mean waste. And by waste, I mean grit. And nuclear grit is to be found everywhere around nuclear plants. The town of Port Hope, with a population of 18,000. I'd like to, yeah. The town of Port Hope, with a population of 18,000, has the oldest nuclear refinery in the world. And turn it vertically, please. This one. That's it. Thank you. And Port Hope has become the grittiest nuclear town in the nation. Although the grit has been said to be nothing to worry about, the price tag for ridding the town of this grit has come to $1.2 billion. Next. And Canada's world-class, world-famous nuclear laboratory, Chalk River, has amassed a nuclear grit liability of $7 billion. Two things about these wastes. One, it requires a certain effort of the imagination to keep them in mind. And two, the second thing is that many of them last just about forever, which requires a super effort of the imagination to keep them safe for the future. The nuclear age has happened on our watch. So it's only right that we take some ownership of its wastes and make sure we put them where the gene pool doesn't shine. It's only right that we not sign up for kicking new small reactors down the road, sowing them dragon's teeth across our land.
Are we ready for questions?
Hello.
You said that the government. Well, you said that you were calling to stop colluding with the industry, the government to stop colluding with the industry. What do you mean by that?
Well, collusion is a phrase that means that there's a close cooperation behind closed doors often between government, industry, and the regulator. The Japanese parliament identified collusion between those three bodies, the government, the industry, and the regulator, as the principal cause of the Fukushima disaster. So the collusion is not only unsavory, it's also actually dangerous. So, for example, we have the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, which is the regulator here in Canada, lobbying government to exclude these new reactors from any environmental assessment. So they are working behind closed doors to try and deprive Canadians from the possibility of even assessing the safety of these new reactors. We believe the government has to take charge, and one of the things they can do is to make the CNSC report to a different minister. At the moment, they're reporting to the very minister, the Minister of Natural Resources, who is charged with the responsibility of promoting and developing these new reactors. That should not be the body that the CNSC is reporting to. There should be independence. They could, and by the way, the law does not have to be changed. In the law, it says that the CNSC can report to the Minister of Natural Resources or any other minister that the government deems. So it could be, for example, the Minister of the Environment. This would already show that the government wants to break open that little compact and make sure that there's breathing space for Canadian democracy. Right now, it seems that there's not very much room for that kind of process. The fact that we have a policy vacuum on radioactive waste is a good example. The government has confessed quite openly that they've been meeting with industry people for the last year and more, and yet they have not consulted with Canadians or First Nations on establishing a so far non-existent policy for the adequate management long-term of radioactive waste. Why should we be putting the cart before the horse? So these are the kind of things we're calling for. Collusion is perhaps a strong charge and may not be justified, but one has to avoid even the appearance of collusion in order to really foster a democratic, a healthy democracy, you might say.
That in general, the Trudeau government is listening too much to the nuclear industry?
I believe there's a danger that it's quite possible when you only hear one side of the story, when you're listening to the salesman, not being told the dangers. For example, in other countries, such as the UK, they have deliberately put these small reactors on the back burner because they have heard mixed stories about it. They have heard advantages and disadvantages. Similarly, in the United States of America, there has been a much more public debate and much more open procedures related to these small reactors. Here in Canada, it's mostly been done out of the public eye, and it should not continue so. There are people within the nuclear industry, such as a vice president of Exelon Corporation, one of the large nuclear firms in the States, who has said that he does not believe that any new nuclear reactors are going to be built anywhere in North America, and that includes small reactors, because they are simply too expensive in terms of the competition. The competition is thriving, and they are coming in now that they have really good energy storage systems. Both wind and solar are making great strides worldwide, whereas nuclear has been declining steadily since 1997. It's dropped from 17% of world electricity to below 11% of world electricity, and is still going down. So, besides which, these small reactors, even under the best of circumstances, they would not start making a contribution for about a decade. That's way too long. According to the warning we got from the United Nations recently, we've got to deal with the climate change question much quicker than that. So perhaps the government would be wise to open its doors and listen to a lot of different voices and get different opinions before embarking upon this adventure. It's really a nuclear adventure.
Any more questions?
Question à Madame Charbonneau, alors. Donc, peut-être pour m'expliquer un peu aussi en français. Donc, dans 2 jours, il va y avoir le dévoilement de la feuille de route qui a été commandée par le gouvernement sur les petits réacteurs modulaires. À quoi vous vous attendez? Est-ce que vous avez l'impression que cette feuille de route va se retrouver directement entre les mains du gouvernement qui va appliquer cette feuille de route-là, ou il devrait y avoir un peu plus de prudence?
Je crois qu'il devrait y avoir un peu plus de prudence. Et je crois qu'il serait sage que le gouvernement ne suive pas des modes juste parce que des gens veulent vendre des produits, des nouveaux produits nucléaires. Parce que c'est bien facile de dire, mais ça va remplacer, mais il reste que le gouvernement ne s'occupe pas des déchets radioactifs, surtout ceux de moyenne activité. Puis, malgré la bonne volonté de tous les chercheurs, lorsque les gens démantèlent des installations, s'il n'y a pas de site approprié pour les déchets de moyenne activité, ils sont impuissants à faire quoi que ce soit. Ce sont uniquement des solutions temporaires et ils ne règlent rien. Pourtant, il y a des budgets qui ont été réservés pour les déchets nucléaires hérités au Canada. Mais si on empêche, si on ne donne pas les moyens aux gens comme à Chuck River et aussi pour les réacteurs qui ont été arrêtés, si on ne leur donne pas les moyens de disposer de façon permanente les déchets, ça bloque tout le développement nucléaire, parce qu'on ne peut pas penser un projet nucléaire sans penser qu'est-ce qu'on fait des déchets. C'est aussi simple que ça. Mais c'est un gros problème. Alors, tout le monde essaie de pousser un peu des déchets par-ci, par-là. Ça encourage des comportements qui sont pas tout à fait éthiques, selon moi, parce que c'est un gros problème. Alors, à un moment donné, il faut qu'il y ait des décisions rationnelles qui soient prises et qu'on donne la priorité au traitement des déchets nucléaires. Tant que c'est pas réglé, ça sert à rien. C'est absolument irrationnel et irresponsable.
Il y a quelques semaines, les scientifiques du GIEC ont dit qu'on avait à peu près 12 ans pour renverser la tendance, pour s'attaquer au changement climatique, sinon il allait être trop tard. Est-ce que c'est pas tentant d'aller voir le nucléaire qui n'émet pas de gaz à effet de serre dans ce contexte-là d'urgence, finalement?
Mais je pense que d'abord, changer les habitudes de consommation des gens, c'est quelque chose qui coûte pas cher, puis qui est réaliste. Et puis, l'énergie solaire et l'énergie éolienne, ça ne génère pas de déchets, là. Et puis, c'est une technologie qui est prête, alors que l'énergie nucléaire, quand on parle des réacteurs, comme là, il y a eu une annonce que il y aurait des réacteurs développés au Canada qui seraient prêts pour 2020, j'en doute fort. Et ce sera trop tard. Ces technologies-là ne sont pas au point. Alors, lorsqu'on présente ça, que ça va sauver le climat, c'est pas prêt. Il y a des grands délais de mise en service. Il y a des problèmes technologiques parce qu'entre une conception puis la réalisation concrète, très grosse différence. Alors, on est mieux de miser sur ce qui est acquis, qui est réaliste et de faire avec que de rêver. C'est très facile de rêver aux nouvelles technologies, là. Mais c'est pas ça la réalité, ça presse. Il faut lutter contre le réchauffement du climat. En tout cas, c'est mon opinion personnelle, là. Soyons terre à terre et soyons solaires et éoliens.
Okay, that'll take care of the press conference. Thank you very much.
Could I make some further comments?
Yes, do you want to make a?
I'd just like to mention that among the radioactive waste that are produced, almost everybody knows now that nuclear reactors generate in their interior high-level radioactive waste, which can be transported off-site and which the Canadian government has vowed to, they do have a policy for that waste. But what many people don't realize is that the structure itself becomes radioactive, so that when they take the waste out of the reactor, what's left is still radioactive and remains dangerous for hundreds of thousands of years still. I have included in the press kit a little document called Zombie Reactors, which indicates that these reactors, even though they're dead, they're still dangerous, they're still alive in a certain sense. And that's why it's very dangerous at this moment. Lacking a federal policy, lacking a government policy which dictates what can and cannot be done about these wastes, it is convenient for the industry to simply bury the waste on site, that is the structure, after they take the high-level waste away, and just pour concrete in and say, okay, that's now a permanent waste dump. And this is what I meant previously when I said we could end up with hundreds or even thousands of nuclear waste dumps right across Canada in the absence of a proper federal government policy. Now, the government itself has acknowledged that it does not have a policy for radioactive waste other than the irradiated fuel, and we need it. We need it, and we need it now, and it should be arrived at through open consultation with Canadians and with First Nations. As the original Nuclear Fuel Waste Act for the high-level waste, that was developed by a 10-year process which had public hearings in 5 provinces. So where is that process today? We need a similar process to really deal with what is genuinely going to impact future generations of Canadian. It's quite possible that these small reactors are a pipe dream and are not going to materialize any better than the so-called nuclear renaissance of 20 years ago. Everybody was talking about there was going to be a nuclear renaissance. It was a complete flop. It could very well be the same thing with these small reactors. The waste is here now. The waste is right now being planned to be stored in an irretrievable fashion, in a way which is irreparable. That has got to be made sure that it's done properly. And for that, we need not only technology, we need to have a federal government guidance, federal policy for an acceptable policy that's acceptable to Canadians through consultation.
Okay, thank you.
I'm getting questions from the live stream.
No, it's only accredited media.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.